Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to find out how it all goes together. So I would like to introduce you to the cast. Let's do this in a hierarchical manner. Let's start with the big mama, the big mother-in-law, because she's the I told them all about you already. This is Dame Josephine Barstow, who will be playing Kabanicha. Her wimpy son, Tichon, is Boris. His wife, the poor suffering Kátya Kabanová, Patricia Reset. On the other side of the family is Uncle Decoy. That's got the psycho. His nephew and Katya's lover from the second act on is Raymond Very. Now the couple who are very cool and comfortable are Kudriash, who is Doug Jones, who plays the guitar, and Barbara, who just causes a lot of trouble for everybody, but means well. And we have two servants too. We have Glasha, who's Kelly Gephardt. Tekrusha is Ilse Apestegi. Is that right? Apestegi. Okay, so let's give it a go, everybody. We're going to play it from the beginning.
Katya has always been probably my favorite Janacek. I first saw it many years ago in London at English National Opera in a production by David Pountney. And I fell in love with the music then and the story and the characters, the people in the opera. So when I was thinking of having a Janacek opera produced here, this became the first choice, obviously Katya, and then I realized I was so passionate about the work that I should really direct it myself rather than give it to somebody else and then get anxious about the way they were treating the young lady. So I've enjoyed every minute of it, and working with Jane Lamotte to develop the sets has been a wonderful experience for both of us. And it very much is a local production in that regard, and that's one of the strengths, I think, of this particular work. Katya is a pretty straightforward story about a young woman who is in a marriage in which she is dominated not only by her husband, but he too is dominated by his own mother. So there's a pecking order, and she is really being crushed. And she has no real life, and she looks for escape, talking about wanting to fly. She remembers the flowers and the birds that she used to adore, that she doesn't have the same relationship with now, and she retreats into religious fantasy. She also sees another man, a man named Boris, with whom she falls in love, even though she has never spoken to him. And it is set up by Vavra that she will meet Boris. When she meets Boris, passion breaks loose, because there was so much within her that was held back. She falls madly in love. They have an affair while her husband, Tichon, is out of town. But when he returns, her world collapses because she knows she can't continue with Boris. She confesses because of her religious beliefs. And finally, knowing that there is no future, she suicides by jumping into the Volga. That's basically the story of Katya, but there are other stories going on at the same time. We have Vavra and Kudriash, two younger people who actually escape the village by the end of the opera and go off to Moscow, We have the older people, Kabanicha and Decoy, who are a part of the trouble with the village. These are the dominant power structures that like to suppress everybody else. So it works on several levels. When I was planning this opera, John Fiore was the first person that came to mind to conduct. He had worked here on the magic flute, but I've known him for many years and I admire his talent, but I also knew he loved Janacek, and that was important. I needed to have somebody who had the passion for the music that I have. If you're not passionate about an opera, you shouldn't direct it, conduct it, or sing it.
Janacek's music is extremely individual, and I think that's one of the attractive points about his scores, is that the sound of the harmonies, the sound of the rhythms, the sound of the orchestration is very unique, and I don't really think it sounds like anybody else. And in this piece particularly, I think he's at his most romantic. Yenufa has wonderful romantic things in it, but Katya, besides having these magnificent stretches of, how should we say, ecstatic music, a la Tristan and Isolde, but much shorter, of course, also has the angularity that you'd come to expect in a lot of Janacek's works, which means slightly odd rhythms, slightly jaunty rhythms. And interestingly enough, a lot of those kinds of rhythms are heard with the less pleasant characters, like Kabanicha and Decoy, and a lot of the music has typical Janacekian subtleties, like having no strong beat and starting figures are not on the beat, so it always feels like it's a little off. There's a whole scene which is basically with silent downbeats. So it always feels like it's kind of in the air. And the mother's music is also very syncopated and it's never really downbeats. And it's like little karate chops. I think that this opera also shows Janacek's great gift for dramatic intensity. And that's something that he always does well. It's interesting how he sets scenes. He tends to build scenes on a particular motive, but the way he changes the motive and the way he fiddles around with the orchestration and the harmonies around those motives and makes them work around the libretto is really quite fascinating. Janacek was a collector of folk music as well, from his Moravian roots, and in his operas there often appears folky elements, and you hear a lot of them in Yenufa, and you do hear some of them in Katya, not as much as some of the other operas, but they're there. And Kudryas, for instance, has a little song with a guitar, and it has certainly a folksy feeling to it, even though the harmonies are certainly Janacekian around them, and also the way that the orchestra plays, that we have a harp playing and you have some pizzicato strings and some people off the beat, and the harmonic language is definitely Janacek's, but the feeling is a folk feeling. The singers are very serious about really getting the flavor of the language right, and the diction coach, Susan J, has been very helpful and a lot of fun to work with. Of course, Pat is a great singing actress, there's no question about that. And it's wonderful to have that kind of musical intelligence as well. She's constantly thinking, she's very responsible to the composer's intentions, and that for us is always a joy.
Katya is a dreamer. She's someone who, because of her circumstance, is forced to live in her imagination more than perhaps the people that we see in the opera around her, definitely more than them. It's very important to point out that Katya lives in a very oppressed world. She speaks about this in her scene with Varvara, saying how, oh, you should have known me before I was married. And not that being married necessarily is oppressive, but the fact that this terrible person, this mother-in-law who behaves oppressively, but also the town, the whole society, it's very judging and oppressive, and there's no freedom of spirit, no freedom of will, really. It's just all about appearances and rules. And so Katya desperately needs to escape that, and she does in her imagination, and she's a person that will allow herself to perhaps go too far in her imagination. It almost seems as though when she's retelling something and remembering something, she is taken back to that memory to the point where she thinks she's living it right then and there. There's something very real about her imagination, if you will. I think the most significant moment for Katya in terms of the audience's experience of Katya is her monologue in the penultimate scene. The moment when we see her completely unraveled. It's also my favorite moment. Any singer loves going crazy on stage. It's rich stuff, you gotta love it. But it's also, we find out, we see that she's still so tortured, and she still harbors pieces of memories of what's happened to her, but nothing makes sense anymore.
Boris, he's an interesting character. What happens to Boris vocally, I think, is really parallels what he goes through in his character development. He begins telling the story of how he was brought up in Moscow and how he had pretty much everything that he wanted, and then has been subjected to this enormously terrible relationship with Decoy. And in the first act, his music is very narrative, but it's almost whiny. He complains about things. When he reaches the point where he expresses that he has fallen in love with somebody from a distance, he almost becomes, he starts talking about how his life is wasting away here because he has this potential and he really can't do anything about it. So it's that whole first scene is very whiny almost. When he finally gets to the point where he meets Katya, where they actually physically get together for the first time, the music is so romantic. It's very expansive, and his lines are much longer. And it really, I think, expresses the potential that Boris has as a character. As it goes then into the third act, when he has already decided or has been told that he's going to Siberia from Uncle Decoy. His music then, again, becomes a little bit whiny. So you see that he starts whiny almost, a little complaining. He gets to that romantic, so you see the potential that he has, and it goes away in the third act. So it's pathetic, actually.
Tichon is, he's so defeated by the women in his life, by his mother, who speaks to him with such anger and such contempt and bitterness all the time, and controls and manipulates him. And that bleeds over into all his relationships with his wife, Katya, with everybody in his life. He just wants to escape his reality and head to the pub and have a drink. As for the, actually getting to play Tichon, it's a lot of fun, to play somebody that, just the sound of his mother's voice breaks his spirit, and his countenance falls, and you can, there are a lot of ways to play, a fellow that's so whipped by the women in his life, and it's a lot of fun. I don't find it extremely difficult. It lies in a nice place for me, and the way it's written, it speaks so genuinely with the text that it just fits. And so whether he's apologetically instructing Katya on how she should behave while he's gone, or if he's responding to his mother, the emotions that are written fit the text. They're married to the text so beautifully. So vocally, the most difficult thing is to not sound like me and not sound like a boy from Texas trying to sing Czech.
Kabanicha is, she's not a very pleasant lady. She's the catalyst for all the tragedy of the piece. There is, even though I have dug quite hard, I can find no reason for her being as unpleasant as she is. She's clearly extremely unhappy, but why she should be so unhappy is not clear. But her envy, her bitterness causes extreme unhappiness in her son, and ultimately the death of Katya. So I'm afraid there's not a lot to be said for her as a pleasant personality. As with the other characters in the piece, she is extremely well characterized by the music, and she has the least lyrical music of all the characters.
Varvara is a very fun character. I really enjoy her. A lot of people have been telling me that she is the bad girl in the opera, but I've never seen her that way. Not since I first started learning Varvara. She's the only one in the opera who understands Katya, and she deeply loves Katya. And she may be the one who tempts Katya with the key and into meeting Boris and having this affair. But from Varvara's point of view, she's doing what she believes is going to make Katya happy. And that's the most important thing to her because she loves her so much. And Varvara comes from a very different place than Katya. She's a foster child in the house. And so even though she's grown up in the same household, she's not a blood relative. So she's not tied by the same repressions, I think, that Katya is. Even though she's exposed to them, she doesn't internalize them the way that Katya has. And with Katya, it's very much of a religious fervor. With Varvara, it's much more practical. I first met Ian 10 years ago before I started singing with the San Diego Opera Chorus. And this is the first time I've worked with Ian as a director. It's been wonderful because I've gotten to know a completely different side of him, and I feel like he's pulled together a fantastic show.
There are many ways to produce an opera. One is to make the sets dominant, and we see that frequently at the Metropolitan Opera in the Zeffirelli productions of Aida, for example, or a Zeffirelli Traviata, a Zeffirelli La Bohème. The sets are huge, and you go away whistling the scenery. But Kátya Kabanová, to me, is one of those works where the scenery is not the vital element. The element is really the characters. It is a drama with music. And therefore, to fill the stage with the Volga and with a Russian village, a shtetl or something like that, doesn't make any sense at all. So what we have, in fact, is a very spare production. It contrasts wonderfully with everything else in the season, which is actually quite large. And we're able to focus very much on the acting and on the singing and the storyline. But every scene has an image in it that I hope will burn itself into the mind of the audience so that they will go away still with a visual representation of the opera, because that is important. But they will have related it to what is being said and sung instead of seeing it merely as background or as a trapping that is thrown on the stage just to take up space. The final scene, for example, is actually quite daring for a San Diego audience. It's just a big open stage. And I don't think we've ever had a stage here before with virtually nothing on it except a rear projection. But the singers dominate the stage so well that I think it works marvelously. That's it. So you're chatting, she drifts. And Boris is now going to go right down there. Yes, and you run to him.
Yeah, opera's over.
That's it. Unlike the other three operas that I've directed, this one doesn't have any significant chorus at all. The chorus is off stage, and that changes the way I approach the work. This is really much more a play, and I think what I'm able to bring to this is that focus on the singing actor. The cast that we've assembled, I think, is absolutely first-rate. They were all chosen not only because of their voices and their physical appearance for the role, but their ability to act. And they've all been able to create very different characters so that no two people on that stage look alike. It's not the homogeneous chorus that Anna Russell refers to. They don't exist. These are individual characters among the principals, and being able to work so directly with all of them, and having myself enjoyed the time on stage as a singer and actor, I think we've been able to dig fairly deeply into how these characters behave and walk and gesture and so on. And I hope that the audience will feel that. And if they do, I think they'll get much more inside the drama. The great thing about sitting in the darkness of the theatre, we can become any of these characters. We can become them, we can live their lives for the couple of hours that the opera goes on. Coming up, just turn around. He's going to come down here and sort of catch the body as it floats by and get you under an arm. And if you just lift up with your feet a bit and throw you up.
And then someone has to
roll.
Okay, wait.
You can do that with your hips. Okay. And now stand back and we'll just let her go.
Right into the pit.
All right.
From here.
Can we pad this edge?
John David?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Put good thick padding all along here.
Absolutely.
Just from there to there so we can roll her over the edge.
That's from stepping it like 4 or 5 feet over.
They just want us to
Far away, they can't see anything like that.
What are we doing? You want me to get down here? All right.
You want me to be in the front on that side?